the Needle Addict podcast. I know it's been a while, but I am the host, Diela, and I hope that you enjoy this podcast about knitting and crochet. Excuse me. Knitting and crochet and all that sort of crafty things. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. I know it's been a while since I podcasted, but I feel like because of that, I have a lot to show you, and so I don't want to ramble on about too much stuff and then not really get anything said. But I will mention that you might notice I'm in a new space. I'm in our lounge at the moment, because my craft room is kind of a mess at the moment, and a sort of mess that I can't just tidy up straight away. So I thought I'd just move it downstairs, and you can see the lovely Christmas tree. That side, left or right, it's mixed up. And one of my projects. There! One of my socks that I've knitted. So I have this cute little notebook that I've been keeping some notes in for kind of what I finished since we last spoke, and I think I've got everything. So the first thing is a baby blanket. So I have some family here who are kind of extended family that I've met since I've moved to Scotland, and one of them is pregnant and she's having a baby soon. So, oops, which side is which? I can't remember. But this is the baby blanket. So I think it's like a decent size, and it is garter stitch, so it's kind of stretchy. For this, I did not use a pattern. I made up my own pattern for this, and it is basically just very similar. I've noticed, like, since later on I knit the grandma's dishcloth, so it's kind of similar to that. But basically what I did is I started with 3 stitches, and then I just kind of started increasing, and once I had enough stitches, I knit 3 stitches before I did a front back increase. Then I knit until there were 4 stitches left, and then I did a front back increase, and then 3 stitches, and that gave me this nice little sort of border that I've got going on. Those are just literally the 3 stitches. And because it is garter stitch, then I increase on one row, and then the next row I just knit plain, and then that's how I increased. Some people only increase at the front of, so if you do grandma's dishcloth, you increase at the front every time, and then you just increase every single row. It kind of has the same effect. You still knit the increase, like knit plain the increases. It just depends on whether you feel like remembering which row you're on or not. So it's a bit complicated, but anyway. So this was knit with a 5.5 needle. Yes, told you about the increases. Then I used Karen baby cakes in the dreamy peach color. So that is this color here up until there. And then I bought a plain white in the Stylecraft special for baby Aran weight. And I bought that for doing a border around the edge, but I realized that I thought it would be too small if it was just this section and that section. And so I decided rather to just include the white in the middle. And I'm quite happy with how that worked out. I did have to do a little bit of jiggery pokery with which side of the ball I started with, and then again here which one I started with, because my balls were not wound like exactly the same, even though it was the same dye lot. The 2 cakes like kind of started and ended in different places, so I had to try and figure out what I thought best, because I didn't want like this white section right next to this white section, and these are like really thin rows, like the pink and the grey landed up being really thin because it was only a tiny bit like at the end, so I had to kind of do a bit of maneuvering around that, but I'm pretty happy with how it finished. And I didn't block it since it's garter stitch. I decided just to wash it and let it dry flat. So that is that. Where am I going to put this? It's stuff everywhere. The next thing I have is my estuary cardigan, and that is this one. So I suppose I can actually put it on because I'm not wearing a jumper. Oops. There we go. So I did the colors kind of different to how they did it, because in the pattern it looks kind of blackish in the video, or it's coming up on my screen kind of black, but it's actually like a deep aubergine purple. And in the pattern, you knit the band in the same color as what it was. So you'd knit it in kind of green here, and then you would switch into the brown for the bottom, and these would be brown. But I was working with leftover yarn from my honeymoon blanket, which I will insert a picture here quickly. So I was working with leftover yarn from that, and so I didn't quite have enough, or I was worried that I wouldn't have enough. I probably did, but I was worried I didn't have enough to do the same thing, so I decided to add in a third color, and I actually really like how it turned out. My buttons look a bit funny because I've sewn them on with pink thread, but that's because these buttons are not kind of going to be the final buttons. I want to be able to cut them off easily because I didn't actually get around to buying buttons for the cardigan that matched, and so these are all, you can't really, I don't think you can really see, but these are all different to each other. You can actually, I think like these are like completely different sizes, because I just had like a tub full of like mismatched buttons, so I just used like similar color ones. But I will be getting eventually sometime I will be getting proper buttons, and then I will cut them off and sew them on with a matching color thread. So the estuary cardigan is a pattern called the estuary cardigan, and it is by the Barocco design team. Now I kind of mixed up a bit what I was doing because I actually can't remember what thickness yarn it called for, but this is charity, it's Elm Charity Knit, which is South African yarn, and it's called double knit, but it is definitely more of like an Aran or worsted weight. Like it's definitely thicker than a double knit. So I kind of mixed around with that, like depending on like what size I knit, I kind of changed it to what I thought would fit me and be like slightly bigger. It also meant that I changed my needle size. I used a 5mm needle. I can't remember what the pattern called for, but it definitely was not 5mm, but I decided that that would work better with the yarn I was using. And I think that's pretty much everything I have to say. It is a little bit, I don't know if I can get up and show you. Well, it looks a bit weird with this top, but like my jeans kind of come to here, so it kind of, it's a little bit short, especially in the back. It's a little bit short for how I usually wear my cardigans, but I think it works. It's not too bad. So I think that's everything I have to say about this. This took me a little while to knit because I kind of got disenchanted with it for a little while, but then when I finally decided to finish it, it went really quickly. Oh, and one last modification I made. Did I say it was made by the Barocco design team? Not sure. But one last modification I made was that the pattern for the sleeves is knit flat, and I knit them in the round because why not? So that's what I did. Then my jumbo Christmas socks. So we did not have any Christmas socks or stockings, these things. My husband and I did not have any, and so I just thought it would be fun to make some, especially as it's knit with like a bulky yarn, then it would definitely go quite quickly. And since I normally knit like normal size socks for my husband and I thought it couldn't be too hard to knit these. And so I knit, I don't know if I can get it for you. Whoops. Oh. So there's another one in like the opposite colors. So this one's red and white, and the other one's white and red. Easy. So this pattern is the Jumbo Christmas Stocking in a Jiffy by Jennifer Jackson. I like that alliteration. So I just kind of looked around on Ravelry to see if there was a pattern that I liked, and I liked that this one was knit with quite a thick yarn, so it would go really quickly. And yeah, I was just happy with how it worked. So I knit these on a 10mm needle with the Robin Super Chunky, and the red is red. I'm not going to point. The red is claret, and then the white, I lost the ball band, but it's white. And I actually found, contrary to what I thought would happen, I did not enjoy knitting with the bulky yarn and the big needles. It actually hurt my hands, which is very strange. Like, I've heard lots of people say, oh, I could never knit with such tiny needles when I'm knitting like socks for myself on a 2.5mm needle. But I actually find that so much more comfortable for my hands. I found like the big yarn was like difficult to work with, and it just felt awkward, and cumbersome and it just hurt my hands. So I was actually really glad when these socks were finished. Um, Another thing is I didn't do like a slip stitch in the heel. I didn't do a slip stitch like I usually do for my normal socks because I thought no one's actually going to be wearing them. They're not going to get wear in the heel area, so there's no point in doing that. So I didn't do that. And I think one thing I did do is, you can kind of see it here, I did add some other thread that kind of I sewed through this part of the sock so that when it hangs, this part of the sock doesn't get stretched, because I thought if it's just hanging on the yarn that I knit it with, it's definitely going to stretch. Like if there's heavy presents or something in there, or lots of presents, then it will definitely kind of droop too much. So I added that in just for like extra stability so it didn't stretch. I think that's everything. We're going through this quite well, so the next thing I have to show you, I will have to insert a picture here because I've already wrapped them up as a sort of like Christmas stocking filler for my husband. But they are what I call my Helensburgh socks. And these are socks which we bought the sock wool in Helensburgh while we were on holiday. And it's a Regia Voorvaardig 06669, so it's 06669, and so the body of the sock is knit with that, and then the heel and the toe is knit out of the West Yorkshire Spinners 4-ply signature colorway in their juniper color. So it's just like another blue color, and I had that left over from some other socks that I had knit him, and they were just like lying in my spare sock yarn stash, so I thought that the color went well. And I like to add contrasting heel and toes just so that like the color stripes aren't messed up. I also knit these using the Winwick Mum sock along pattern and or the basic sock pattern. It's all on my Ravelry. All of the things I'm talking about are all on my Ravelry, so you can also check there if there's any kind of notes or modifications you want to check what I did, then they will be on there. So that's how I knit, and it's a 64 stitch. I'm lucky my husband and I have the same size like sock circumference, so it's pretty easy. I don't have to knit like giant socks for him. So yeah, he chose the colorway and it took me so long to knit them. We chose the colorway in like August and for some reason I just never like really got around to knitting them. Like I knit like half of them and they just sat there forever, like not doing anything. And then recently a friend of mine from a knitting group wanted to learn to knit socks, and so I brought my socks along with when I went to the cafe to help her learn to knit, and well, knit socks, and I just landed up, that's what started me knitting them again. And then by the time I finished them, I think it was like the last week of November, and so I thought my husband doesn't know that I finished them, so I'll just finish them off and wrap them up and put them away, so they're going to be part of his Christmas present. So he kind of knows what they are, but he doesn't know that he's getting them for Christmas. Yep, that's everything. Then we have the Grandma's dishcloth. So I was watching quite a bit of the Yarn Hoarder podcast by Amber Lindemann. She's an amazing podcast. You should definitely check her out if you haven't. She's very funny and she like has such like a homely podcast. I really like it. It's lovely. And then my mother's actually been talking to me a lot about sort of like waste reducage and like just being more environmentally friendly. Like she's been telling me about her journey that she's been on, and so like she had been talking about using reusable washcloths, and just that combined with Amber Lindemann's kind of like she's doing a challenge to use up. She's got a lot of like dishcloth, yeah, like cotton that she hasn't been using, and she's got a lot. She said she's got enough for like I think it's like 3 years or something if she made a washcloth every week or something. So she like I've been watching that podcast and it just inspired me to make some. So I used the same pattern as she did, which turned out to be quite similar to the pattern that I kind of made up for the blanket. And so the first one I made is this red one, and this is made with this is a South African yarn. It's made with Finnis Colors Bambi, which is their cotton and bamboo blend. And I don't know if you can see, but it's got like a bit of a mottling to it. It's a bit hard to see because the cotton and the bamboo take up the color differently. So it has like some of it is more orange and some of it is more red, which is quite nice. I like that. but the pattern called for, I think, like an Aran or a like worsted weight yarn, and I didn't have that, so this is in my cotton stash. So this is just a double knit, and I held it double. And so I landed up not going, I think the pattern calls for you to increase all the way up to 45 stitches and then start decreasing. This I increased until 35 stitches and then started decreasing, just because what I actually did is I knit from both sides of the ball, so that I would just, and then I weighed it every now and again so that I would use 25 grams because it was a 50-gram ball, and I didn't want to run out. So I just made it as big as I could and then started decreasing. I do find this is a little bit stiff. I mean, you can see it's not super stiff, but it is like, I don't, it has sort of softened up a bit since I've actually started using it. And so it has softened up a little bit, but it is, I think, a little bit more stiff than I would want. So I decided to make a second one. Oh, sorry, I should tell you, this was a 5.5mm needle that I knit this on because I was holding it double. Yes. But, so I decided that once I'd made that one, I thought it was a bit stiff. I thought I'd make a second one because I've actually got quite a bit of cotton in my stash that I don't really know what to do with because I haven't been knitting or crocheting with cotton. And so I made a second one. And this one, I didn't hold it double, I just held it single, so I increased until 45 stitches and then decreased, which again will be slightly smaller than what the original pattern intended because the original pattern was knit with a larger yarn. And this one I used a 5mm needle for. And this is the Finest Colors in Serena, which is just a straight bamboo blend. And you can also see like the mottling. I just love the way that like the color is sort of uneven, how it knits up. I just think it's amazing. So whoops. It has kind of gone a funny shape because I like hung them up to dry because I added like an extra little, I just crocheted like a little loop on the end so that I could hang them up to dry nicely. And this one I feel is actually too thin. Like it needs to be somewhere in between the double, holding it double and having it single, because this I feel like is too insubstantial for, or unsubstantial for cleaning with, but yeah, they work, they're fine. The one thing I have been finding with both of these is that they take forever to dry. Like I can use them once in a day and then maybe use them the next day. So if I have more washing up to do or wiping counters or something, I have to use something else because they just take a really long time to dry. So I don't know if anyone else has been using like cotton like washcloths and stuff. If you have any advice on getting them to dry quicker, I don't know. But that is something. And I seem to remember in South Africa, I crocheted one, which was super stiff. It was almost like a piece of cardboard. Like, it was terrible. But, because I did single crochet. But that never ever dried. Like, it was permanently wet, which was terrible. Which I think contributed to the, like, super stiffness of it. But yeah, so I seem to remember that being a problem from before as well. So we've done the dishcloths. Okay, convertible mittens. So these are my convertible mittens, which they are showing up a little bit blue here, but they're kind of like a nice purpley color. The color is Debbie Bliss Cashmerina DK in Iris, and the number is 18036. And I actually bought this at a secondhand store, which was very nice. Well, the yarn I bought at a secondhand store. So I've used it quite a bit for a few things, but I think this is like the end of what I used. And these are made, ooh, what's the sound? These are made with like a combination of two patterns. So I used the Sarah Basic Fingerless Mittens by Joanna Gitstick. And then I also, so that was just literally the fingerless mitten part, so I'll put one of them on. So that was just this base part here. And for this, I changed the size because I actually noticed what she had, like a gauge size that she suggested, and mine, the rows were correct, but the number of stitches was, mine was too narrow. So I increased it from, I think it was like a 3.5, and I changed it to a 4. Yes, I changed this to a 4mm needle, so I knew it would be slightly bigger. Also because I kind of calculated like by her stitch per inch and then how many stitches were around. I felt like it would be pretty snug, like if I knit the medium size, but if I did the large size, it would be way too big. So I was like a little bit worried it would be too small, but it turned out perfectly. This is great. So that is what I did for this. I did knit this a little bit longer than, I can't remember what she suggested, but usually like in South Africa you would have knitted like to kind of there, so I had more movement here. But because it's so cold here, I decided to knit longer than the thumb as well, like just the top of my thumb is peeking out, so that's great. Then what I did, which is not in any pattern, I decided that, I don't know, I think my husband actually has his split mittens on because I've knit the Winwick Mum split mitten pattern before, and I found that because it didn't overlap enough over here, so it was always kind of like a little bit open, and so it got a little bit cold. Um, and also like if you opened it, it would be like all the way down, like it would be very open, you wouldn't have like this bit here. So I decided that I wanted to have like an extra double layer for when it flaps over. So what I did is I just kind of decided where I wanted it to start down, which for me was 6 stitches below the ribbing. By the way, all of these notes are in my pattern, so if you wanted to try and like in my project pattern notes, so if you wanted to redo this, you could just read it there. But I went 6 stitches down, and then I took another needle and I kind of picked up the stitches, like kind of like you would if you were trying to do a lifeline with a needle. Then I just picked them up, and then I knit across them, and then I cast on, I can't remember how many stitches it was. I think it was 32 or 34. I think it was 34. I think the whole thing was like 68 stitches around. So I had picked up 34 and then I cast on another 34 so that it would be the same circumference. And then I did some ribbing, and then I kind of, at this point I started using the Winwick Mum split mitten pattern to see how long she did hers. And I think she did hers like, you kind of knit until it's like 4 inches from the top or something, and then from the top of your finger or something like that. And then I did the same decreases that were suggested in the split mitten pattern. So that is how I kind of combined the two patterns together. Oh, I'm gonna cough, excuse me. Okay, I think that's everything I have to say about these patterns. But I mean these mittens, but I really love them and they're great because I have 2 other mittens that I've knit myself, but the ones are like kind of complete mittens, and I find that my hands get really hot. Sometimes I need to kind of open them to let them air out a bit if I'm doing a lot of walking. And then the other mittens I have are like really short. They only come to like here, and my whole thumb sticks out. And they're like they're crocheted, and they're like that crocodile stitch. So it's actually quite airy. So if it's very cold, they are too cold. They're also bright green, so they don't really go with a lot of my outfits. And they're crocodile stitch. They're very like, woo, look at my hands. Which you're not always in that sort of mood. I sometimes am, but not actually that often. So I decided I need something a little bit more subtle that I can kind of keep on when I go inside somewhere. I can just open them, and if I'm doing grocery shopping or something really quick, then I don't have to take them off. So that was a lot to say about those mittens. But I decided to make a beanie to match those mittens because I have a beanie. Isn't here? Oh, it's here. Oops. This is my beanie that I've been wearing a lot. I made this last year, and I did show it on the podcast, but it has a massive pom-pom. Massive! Which I love. I love my massive pom-pom. But, if I'm wearing it inside, because we don't always heat our house that much, just to save gas, but also because we've got like a double story, and so if we heat the bottom floor, the one I'm on now, to like the same temperature we want the upstairs to be, the upstairs would be like super hot. So we keep the downstairs a bit cooler. It's like between 17 and 18 degrees Celsius in the downstairs. So if I'm wanting to wear a beanie, I feel like the pom-pom is a bit overkill for when you're inside. It makes it like a bit heavy. I prefer it for outside. But also, if it's raining, then my hood of my jacket doesn't really like go over the pom-pom. Or if it does, it kind of like makes it stick back over my forehead. So I decided I need a new beanie, and I thought since I had leftover yarn in the same color, I would make them to match. So that is what I did. So I made this, again, showing a bit blue on here, but it's purple. And this is also by the Debbie Bliss Cashmerino DK in the Iris colorway. And this pattern is the Boyfriend Beanie by Shandi Agee. Agee. I'm sorry, I don't know. And I will put it on, but it'll probably look a bit weird over my ponytail. But it doesn't look too bad, as long as you don't look at the back. So I really like this. This was a little bit confusing at times because it is a 3x2 rib, which kind of confused me because I always do even numbers, so I either do 1x1 or 2x2 or 3x3. So doing 3x2, I kept like reverting back to 2x2 and then having to like unpick a bit, but like not much, so it was fine. And so yeah, it's a free pattern and it's super simple because it's literally just the rib until you do the decrease, which I thought would take really long, but it didn't. It went really quickly. And these were supposed to be knit on a 5.5mm needle, but the only 5.5mm needles I have are from my grandmother, and they're super old needles, so the cable is like really stiff. And because I was knitting this magic loop, it was like kind of pulling apart at like the joins where you change to the next needle. And so I decided just to go straight down to a 5mm needle, which I have like a new needle, so it's really soft cable. And I also thought it wouldn't matter too much, A, because it's rib, so it's like super stretchy, but B, because this is actually designed to be a man's hat, and I have a pretty small head. So I thought this will be fun, which it is. It's great. I love it. And yeah, like I said, it has no pom-pom, so it fits under my hood. I don't think I have anything else to say about this. It's super soft because it's merino. But it's also nice to wear inside because it's like a lightweight hat, so it keeps your head warm, but it's not too like intense. Whereas like this one, the bottom is like a pretty soft, I think it's also like a merino, but this is actually a yarn spun a yarn spun at Marcando, which is in Scotland, and it is a wool mill that still uses like the machinery from like the 1800s or something, which is pretty cool. But it's a very like scratchy yarn. Like that's why I did the rim in like something softer. So it's great for when I'm outside and it's cold because it keeps me nice and warm, but it's not really something I want to wear inside all the time. We're doing good for time. 27 minutes. Yes. Okay. So then I decided this is another finished object, but it's crochet this time, and I decided to make a doily. And I decided, if I hold it here, you might be able to see sort of better. What if I hold it over there? There we go, that's nice. Okay, so I knit this and I thought it would be kind of Christmassy to put on my table because it kind of reminds me of a poinsettia. And obviously it's red. And then I will just put it on this table over here as our dining room table. So our lounge and dining room is like one room. So I will put that there. But I really like it. So this was also a free pattern on Ravelry. Again, you can find, did I write? I did write it down. The pattern is called Simple Red Doily by Olga Poltava. Olga Poltava. It's a nice name. But yeah, it's pretty simple. I changed, there was like a more complicated picot edging, but I just did like at every point along here that it seemed natural to do it. I don't know how to explain that. I just chained 8, so it's 4 up, 4 down, and it kind of like went down into the same place. So it's just like over these little like flower fanny things over there. So that doesn't really make sense, but I really like how it came out. This is smaller than how the pattern will turn out because I just wanted to work with what I had in my stash, and what I had was L, again, South African yarn, L crochet number 5. So it's a 5, and I think the original pattern was knit for like a size 3 crochet thread, which is bigger. So this is a 5, and I used it with, I just like googled to see which was the best sort of needle size to use, so I landed up using a 1.75mm crochet hook. So this is a bit smaller than how the pattern should have turned out, and I would have been very happy for it to be bigger because I want it for my table. Like, bigger probably would have been better, but again, I wanted to work with what I had. I didn't want to go out and buy more crochet thread because I don't go through crochet thread that much, and I already had red, so I was like, I'm just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna work. And I love it. It actually worked out really quick. I did it in like one evening, and then, well, like afternoon, evening, and then I just blocked it out, just wet blocked it, just soaked it a bit, and then blocked out my ironing board, and I love it. So that is great. And I actually hadn't sewn in the ends until this morning, when I was like, oh, I suppose I'm gonna have to tell people I haven't sewn in the ends, and there were only 2 ends. I was like, I should really do that before I podcast. That would be the right thing to do. So I did. Be proud! Yay! So I have 2 whips. Actually 3. I didn't write the one down. Oops. But I have 3 whips that start with my first cabled socks. They are in this bag, which I made. This is one of the first project bags that I made for myself. And it is a pair of socks. And I finished one. And I'm still working on the other. I think I'm actually only on the cuff of the other. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm pretty much just on the cuff of the other one. But, surprise, surprise! Can you guess whose pattern this is? Winwick Mum! Pretty much all my patterns are Winwick Mum patterns. So this is the Easy Cabled Socks by Winwick Mum, and I love them. I will admit that it takes a bit of brain power, and I got kind of lazy, and so for the foot I just kind of ended it. So this should have continued, the pattern should have continued all the way on, but yeah, I was struggling. These have been, I don't know, I must check my patterns, but like these have been going for like almost a year now, but I just wanted to finish it. So I really love how it's turned out. It's just on the front, not on the back, which I think is nice because it doesn't mess with like the stretchiness too much. This yarn is the Heritage Cascade yarns. It's a 75% merino superwash and 25% nylon, and 437 yards or 400 meters in 100 grams. And the color is just a number, it's 5614. And then for the contrasty bits, I am using another South African yarn. It's called African Expressions in the Soul, and the color is 7112. So I'm very happy with how these are turning out, but they're just a very long-term project. But I knew it was going to be long-term when I started it, because I do not have a lot of patience for cables, just because you have to keep remembering which row you're on, and so you can't just like mindlessly knit on it. Where we live is about 30 minutes to 40 minutes bus trip to the city, and often I go in, so it's nice to have like some mindless knitting to do on the bus. I do a lot of sock and hat knitting on the bus, but this is just not something I could do on the bus, so it's gonna take a while. Maybe next year December I will have finished the other sock, and that's on a 2.5mm needle, in case you were wondering. I'm quite a tight knitter, so I do tend to knit on 2.5mm needles. I have done one pair of socks on a 2.25mm needles, but it just didn't work for me. It just wasn't, I don't know, I didn't like it. Then we have the cabled cushion cover. So I have a bunch of cushions in my craft room, which I think there's like 3 or 4 of them, which have no covers. It's pretty sad. So this is the process of making one. I've been really struggling with this cable. Again, because I was like trying to watch TV and like knit at the same time. Not good. But I think in the end, once like it's all done and blocked, it'll look okay. But this is kind of a variation of the the Stars and Cables pillow cover by Iona van Duurzen. So I'm using a 5mm needle, and I'm using the L Charity knit again, and this colorway is 007 Tropical. It's like a Bond movie. 007 Tropical. Anyway, So instead of doing like a star pattern like they had, I'm just doing garter stitch and then the cable. And I added in like an extra, let me see if I can show you this. So you can see this garter stitch here with some like buttonholes, and then like some plain words stocking it so that it'll fold nicely. And that is just for, like, I don't think that was in the pattern. I think I just added that because I want to be able to button it. I think their pattern, I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, that pattern just, like, you just sew it onto the cushion, but it means you can't clean it, which is a problem because I spilled coffee on everything. So I decided to just make mine have buttonholes. So I don't know how far I am, like maybe 25%. I'm not sure. But anyway, so that is also a project that's taking a while, and it's going to be a while. I know that, but that's fine. Then my last work in progress is something which probably won't take that long because it is just a plain pair of socks for myself. So this is how much I've done. I've just started. That's front with my little stitch marker. Oops. It's gonna focus. No, it's not gonna focus. It is a pretty flower. Yeah. Anyway, this yarn is. Did I left the ball tag upstairs. It is a Debbie Bliss luxury sock. I don't know the colorway. I will insert it at the bottom because I left the ball band upstairs. But I've just started it. I'm not a huge fan of this kind of ball. I probably should have wound it up, but we had friends over last night and I didn't want to be faffing with winding balls and stuff, so I just kind of reached the middle and go up. I'm not a huge fan of this sort of ball. I also am desperate for the colors to change. I've been doing this color and I'm like, every time I'm like, I wonder if this time I pull it's going to change, but it hasn't changed. I'm not actually sure what like the color repetition looks like, so I'm not really sure what color and if I'm going to do a contrasting heel and toe. I kind of do want to, but I'm not sure yet what it's going to be. But it's got this lovely sort of like, this is, whoops, over here it's got like greeny color with like a pinky purple, and then up here it's got like a pinky and a black, and then this part is like green with like a yellow, and I think at some point I can kind of peek in here, it goes like green and pink as well. So I'm quite excited to see like kind of how they work up, but that's kind of what I'm knitting at the moment as like my mindless knitting. Again, it's a Winwick Mum sock along. I think that this yarn is like a little bit thinner than usual because I usually knit 15 stitches for my cuff, and I actually knit 20 for this one because 15 just seemed way too short. So I think that this yarn is a little bit thinner and I'm going to have to knit a bit more to get like my usual length. And these are on 2.5mm needles. These are the Knit Pro Zings. I really like them. And they're super affordable. At least they are in the UK. And that is in another project bag which I made. So it's kind of a longer one. But yeah, so I've been messing around. This one also doesn't have a flat bottom. This one has a flat bottom, but this one does not. I really like it. So this is some, like, this actually used to be a blouse that my mom had, and then she gave it to me, and then it broke, so then I just cut it up. And this is some shwe shwe that I bought when I was staying in South Africa. And this is just like some calico sort of stuff. And this one used to be a dress. And then like the dress, it was kind of like a cheaper dress, so it like didn't, it was like a boob tube and like the elastic went, so it didn't really stay up. And also it was pretty short, because that is a problem for me. I have a very long torso and long legs. I'm just tall. And I find that dresses which are kind of like short but acceptable on other people are short and scandalous on me. And I'm not a scandalous kind of lady. I prefer to be more covered. I don't have a problem with other people. Other people can show as much skin as they like. I really have no problem with other people being totally naked. That's fine, but not me. For myself, I prefer to be more covered. And that is all of my knitting. How long have we been? 14 minutes. That is pretty good going, I think, considering that I haven't podcasted in a really long time. So I'm gonna end off by trying to show you my cat being stinking cute because I've taught him some tricks. You can see that. Okay. Jack, come here. Do you want some treats? We've got this really cute tin for him because the naughty monkey kept breaking in to the oops, there we go. We had like a plastic one and he kept breaking into it, so we had to stop that. Okay, come here. Sit. Good boy. Wait for him to eat it. He really likes Dreamies, so I've kind of mixed like whatever was in this tin from Tesco with the Dreamies. Okay, up, 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 up. Come on. Oh, good boy. I think that is so cute. I love it when he does that. That's my favorite. So like the sitting, I think he does do it because like some people say like, oh, he's just sitting because he's waiting for me. But hey, I think he does do it. Yes. Yes, can I help you? Up, Jack, up. Come on. Up, up, up. Good boy. So that's enough for today. But the thing is that I think he does actually know what it means because when I usually walk around the room so that he has to get up and follow me, and then he'll stand there and wait to see if I tell him to go up or if I tell him to sit. But that's it. That's it. I know you want more, but you can't have more because you will gain weight. Yeah. And also, he keeps losing his collars. So we started buying like the ones from Poundland, which are obviously just £1, because he loses them in the garden when he goes visiting people, so we can't find them. So we just get the cheap ones. But we've been calling him Health and Safety Cat because this one is like day glow orange with like a stripe on it that's reflective. So you a health and safety cat. Yes, you are. That's enough for me and my cat. I really hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and if you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing so you can see more videos. Until next time, bye!